Hello, this is Dave Brooks, Manager of Conservation Services at Spring Valley Nature Center and Heritage Farm, and I'm down here right now by the Merkle Log Cabin at Spring Valley, which is probably one of Spring Valley's most iconic buildings. It's obviously been here the longest, longer than the Nature Center itself and many of the farm buildings. But I'm here today to talk a little bit about the history here, because the cabin is certainly a part of that history, as well as the peonies that you can see in bloom in back of me here right in front of the cabin. And we'll be taking a look at some of the peonies out in the original fields where they were planted back in the 1920s and 30s. And of course the log cabin here was built around 1927-28 by John Redeker, who was one of the descendants of the original settlers here, the Germans. John was the great-great-grandson of the original settlers. He was not so much into farming, at least traditional farming, but decided to get into peony raising. We're standing right now in I guess a fairly good-sized remnant of the peony fields that used to be here at Spring Valley. As I think I said earlier, there was acres and acres of peonies that were planted here back in the 1920s, 30s, and may have well been continued to plant into the 40s. John Redeker decided that he wanted to sell the rootstock and the cut flowers of peonies, because at the time, back in the early part of the 20th century, peonies were very popular for use in funerals, as cut flowers for stage decorations, for parties and conventions and things like that. And he learned peony farming from the Clems, which is with a family still in the nursery business here in northern Illinois, but they were the experts at the time, and decided to start his peony farm right here at Spring Valley on his family's farm. And he built the log cabin as a way to help to market that. The log cabin appeared on his logo for the Redeker peonies. John got into this business, and unfortunately he died at a young age, so his business experienced its first setback. His mother and sister and some family friends decided to continue to maintain the peonies and to carry on the business, which they did so into the late 1930s, at which point, due to the Depression which was occurring at that time, and the fact that there was competition from peonies grown down in the St. Louis area because the roads had been improved, they unfortunately lost the cabin, they lost the land that their family had worked so hard on, and the land was obtained at that point by the Merkel family. They basically were able to acquire the land during that tough economic time period for a lot of folks, but the Merkels continued to maintain the peonies here. So that's the main reason why we have peonies at Spring Valley today, is because the Merkels were the custodians of this property up until the time that the Park District really got involved in purchasing the land for Spring Valley. So the Schaumburg Community Garden Club did a lot of the work of clearing trees and brush in this area here that you can see, and then also transplanted peonies into this area. And they still do most of the work to maintain the peony beds. There are, you can see various colors, a deep red, there's pinks, there's whites. There are these kind of unique, you can still find them, but this is called a single peony because it has just a single row of blossoms along with those thick tuft of stamens and the flower parts that produce seeds. And then there are others. This is a semi-double here, does have some stamens. And then of course the peonies that a lot of people, if I can find some here that are halfway decent to look at. Here's a white a double here, and here's a pink. Well, that's a semi-double there. I'm not an expert in identifying the different varieties, but there's needless to say there's probably over a dozen varieties here. But these peonies are tough. These are survivors, these plants. A lot of these plants were planted originally back in the 1920s and 30s, and here they are today, still alive and blooming. Put it on your calendar, mark your calendar for Memorial Day weekend. That's usually around the time when we advise people to start looking at the peonies to see when they're blooming. So it does depend on when we get our first burst of warmth. This is Dave Brooks at Spring Valley. Thanks so much for watching.